Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. It's been 5 long years since my last video here on YouTube. And there's no really real reason, explanation for it, just kind of lost the love of making videos over the years. And I always figured it'd take something really big to bring me back. Well, today I do have something big that's brought me back. And as a matter of fact, I have something that's brought me back to where I'm actually speaking on a video for the first time because I have something I wanted to talk about. Basically, the thought that I'm wanting to get across in this video is to not overlook lesser expensive instruments if you're a guitar player. Specifically, what I have here is a ESP LTD MH250 NT, the NT standing for non-tremolo. Now, me personally, I'm not a huge fan of Floyd Rose floating tremolos, with the whammy bars and all that. It's a great system. Holds tune very well when you have it set up correctly. I'm just not a fan more so because of the maintenance aspect of it, and I just don't feel like the instruments, they just don't personally sound the way I want them to, in terms of sustain, the way that palm muted notes swell up, just all that good stuff in general. And like I said, I'm personally not a fan, but I know a lot of other folks are a fan, so, that's not me trying to insult Floyd Rose systems. I'm just not a fan personally. So of course the NT, in this case, again, non-tremolo, so it has a tune-o-matic bridge. And again, I've been playing for 15 years, so it's like just the way that, when I'm palm muting notes, I'm used to my hand just sitting, on the strings a certain way, and so a tune-o-matic bridge assists me with that. But going more in depth with this instrument, just a couple of generalizations of it. It's a agathis body, rosewood fretboard, and then neck-through construction. So, and I know a lot of your guitar folks out there, they prefer neck-through construction. In general, instruments that are neck-through usually sustain a little bit better. Notes maybe are a little bit more clear, maybe a little bit louder, so on and so forth. Again, I don't necessarily even have a preference there, actually, if I'm going to be, truthful about it. I've had some bolt-on neck instruments that sustain wonderfully. I've had a couple of set neck instruments that you would have thought would have sustained a little better, but maybe not so much. This instrument actually has a couple of interrelated stories behind it. If you go all the way back to about a year and a half ago, April of 2018, I got my hands on a silver ESP LTD EC1000 Eclipse, or should I say Silverburst, my apologies. And the inspiration for that was Josh Middleton from Silosis. He actually, had a ESP Eclipse 2 and Silverburst that, when I would watch his videos here on YouTube, he would play it a lot of times in his lessons or just his discussions about guitar-related things. And I love the instrument so much that, I had the thought of, well, hey, if I were to acquire a Silverburst EC1000, I could outfit it with some EMG 5766s like what he had on his, and I'd have something similar. So, you fast forward to April 2018, and I acquired the instrument, and it actually came stock with EMG 8160 pickups, which I'm no stranger to EMG. I've, used them in a lot of instruments that I've owned over the years, and I think they're good. I, for the most part, like the way they sound, but I was always more of a Seymour Duncan guy. EMG 5766s, though, kind of changed that, because I ended up getting my hands on a set of one of those pickups, getting my hands on a set of those, the 5766s. I got my hands on them probably about a month after getting the instrument, with EMG's convenient quick connect system, made the change, 15 minutes, retune it, plug in, and boom, the sound was there. It reminds me a lot of, at least in the bridge, the 57 reminds me a lot of the Duncan JB, but you're getting the additional output and clarity that EMGs are known for. So after the success of getting that instrument, putting that set of pickups in there, I had more of an interest in maybe modifying more of my instruments, maybe to have this pickup set in them. I felt that strongly about them. And so fast forward to about 4 months ago, and I'm running a search on reverb.com just looking at prices for EMG 5766s. And I stumble upon this instrument that came up in the listings because that's actually what pickups are in this, the EMG 5766 set. So I think the search for the pickups pulled this in and basically negotiated a price down with the seller and I acquired it for $285, and it has a bunch of modifications on it. Also came with a case, so it was an incredible deal, all around. The seller highlighted in their posting of this instrument that it had some damage on it, because of course, used instrument. And this is actually a 2007 model, so it's been around the block a time or two. But, had a little bit of damage on it, some scuffs, scrapes, what have you. Even has a nice little chunk that's missing right there that you can see, but, I don't really mind it. I kind of like it, actually. It's cool knowing that the instrument has been bashed around a little bit to where, if I bump it or anything like that, I'm probably not going to do anything to it worse than what's already been done to it. And at the end of the day, the instrument, it still functions correctly. So, the fact that it's got a couple dings and scratches on it, not really a big deal. As far as the modifications to the instrument, it actually has some Goto tuners. Try to get a shot of that. Some Goto tuners that are similar. Actually, I believe they're the same ones you see like in the higher end ESPs, such as the Horizon NT2. It also has Goto strap locks that were installed aftermarket, because these things, the strap locks and the tuners, they actually don't come stock with the instrument. So you combine that with the EMG 5766s, and it's like, you got an instrument that's been hot rodded pretty well. The main thing that I had to consider with the instrument was that the seller actually they were very forthcoming about the fact that the low E side on the nut, or should I say the low E slot on the nut, had some damage to it to where the string was sitting too low, and basically when you'd hit it open, just had bad fret buzz. And I'd had the interest of maybe diving into the world of guitar repair and, again, modifications, all that sort of stuff. So I kind of looked at the instrument as a project. It's like, well, hey, if it comes in, and that damage is unplayable, or if just the instrument doesn't function the way that I would like it to, whether it's staying in tune or the way that it sounds, just, so on and so forth, I can modify it to where I get it to where I want it to, or if all else fails, I can take the pickups out, take the tuners out, take the strap locks out. You can basically kind of salvage it for parts, and, I could upgrade any of the other instruments that I have with me. Or I should say that are in my possession. So lo and behold, when the instrument shipped in, it had the nut damage that I fixed. I used the old baking soda and super glue trick, which if you haven't looked that one up, if you're, having issues with fret buzz with a nut, if you haven't looked that one up, I highly recommend it, because that repair has actually held very well for the last 4 months, since I did it, and I actually don't know that the instrument's going to need a brand new nut, because I'm not seeing that the string is sinking in further after 4 months. So I don't really know what else to say there. Maybe at some point it might need a new nut, but for now, it's holding really well. The long story short, though, is when the instrument came in, and I plugged it in for the first time, or should I say, actually, I plugged it in after setting it up, getting the action the way I like it and all that, and I was amazed that in the 15 years I've been playing guitar, it was almost like discovering perfection. And so I guess, again, that leads back to the title or the concept of this video, is that you shouldn't overlook instruments that are maybe a little bit less expensive, especially on the used market if it's had some modifications done to it. Like I said, I've been playing for 15 years. I own quite a few guitars, several relatively expensive ones, and I pretty much can afford just about any instrument that I want to get nowadays. And this one, though, kind of changed my mentality with that a little bit, because it's like, why is it that an instrument that I acquired for basically $300 is outperforming instruments that I have that cost 4 or 5 times as much? And I think that's the hallmark. I think one way you can look at it is it's the hallmark of ESP and their LTD line in general. I know they get some flack from some veteran players or old school folks that, well, hey, it doesn't say ESP on the headstock, so it's not worth it. I own quite a few LTDs that, like I said, similar to this, they outperform some of the more expensive counterparts, from other companies. Like, just kind of, for example, when I started playing guitar back in 2004, I started on some of my father's instruments, because he had his own little guitar collection, when he was younger, that he had held on to over the years. So I started on some of his instruments, and that was a great thing. It was awesome, just to start with those the first couple of years. And just kind of springboard off that, then you later get your hands on what things that you're more interested in, just, from a guitar standpoint. So I was a huge fan of Jackson guitars when I was really young, and I think a lot of that was because of, Scott Ian from Anthrax, and a couple of other guys. I'm a huge thrash metal fan, so a lot of my, playing choices, not only just from an actual physical guitar playing standpoint, but also just gear choices come from those guys. And so again, I was a Jackson fan for quite a few years there, and still am to a degree. I think they make good instruments, but basically every LTD instrument, it seems like no matter what price level, what tier they're at, have all performed amazingly. And again, these are all instruments that are more budget conscious, I'll say, for lack of a better term. Just kind of running through a couple in general, I mentioned the Silver Burst Eclipse earlier. That one has been an amazing instrument. I also have a black LTD Eclipse, the EC1000T model, and I actually put a set of EMG 5766s in it relatively recently. And sound-wise, that little experiment hasn't quite panned out to the level that I wanted it to, but the instrument does sound better than it did, so mission accomplished somewhat there. The 5766s in this instrument are, I'd say, a perfect match. Or I should say the instrument and the pickups are a perfect match. Basically, when I plugged this one in, like I said, it was perfection. Just the way that it sounded, the way that it felt, just all that. And just kind of going back to what I was saying, it's like several years ago I acquired a Alexi 600 ESP LTD Alexi Leho signature model, and that one, in comparison to some of the Jacksons I'd owned that were more expensive, just doesn't necessarily blow it away, but it's right there and in some ways surpasses those Jacksons. One of my dream instruments over the years was the Scott Ian Jackson Silver Burst Soloist, and I got my hands on one of those in 2014, and great guitar in its own right. It has the Seymour Duncan JB in the bridge, just kind of plug and go and sounds great. But then I come back to this one, and it's like, again, how is it that an instrument that cost a fraction of the price, basically almost 1/5 the price, and it's right up there with it, and in some ways outperforms it. So again, the moral of the story is, if an instrument is less expensive, don't discount it, or don't overlook it. It's like it could very well be an instrument that, now again just performs as well as the big time ones, and in some ways can surpass it. This one's changed my mentality a lot to where it's like, I think when I was younger, it's like the dream is, and I think every guitar player feels this way, but, when you're younger, your dream is that you want to have a custom instrument, American made if you're in the United States of America. There's always been this idea that American made instruments are, the be all end all and the absolute best. And I don't know that that's necessarily extremely true anymore. Obviously, American made instruments still excellent. I'm not trying to downplay them whatsoever. But you have a lot of your Asian counterparts in countries like Indonesia, Korea, Japan, so on and so forth, that I think not only can they compete favorably, with the American-made counterparts, but again, they surpass them in some ways. And so like this one again, this instrument, a 2007 Indonesian-made instrument, and with the upgrades, it plays incredibly and it sounds incredibly. So there's not really much else I can say other than, don't overlook the capability of an instrument that, maybe upon first look, it's not exactly what you're wanting, but, you give it a chance, because this one, after these upgrades and after a really good setup and all that, even despite having a few dings and such on it, it just plays really well, and at the end of the day, it inspires me to want to play. And I think that's the most important thing. You can have the most expensive instruments in the world, but if they don't make you feel something in here, what's the point? Why is it that, and again, just asking rhetorically, but why is it that, an instrument like this that's, again, barely $300 on the used market, when I think about playing the guitar on a daily basis, this is the first one I go to pick up. I'm just completely blown away by, an inexpensive instrument that performs so well, and I know that this isn't the only example of it, so I don't know, just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about that today, just kind of some food for thought, thoughts and opinions from myself. I hope you all have a great day. Take care.